Welcome back to Defeating the Darkness with Downtown Heather Brown, True Crime Stories. We are here today with one of my very best friends and one of the most badass attorneys, Robin Sax. And Robin's here with us to talk about all of the amazing things that she's doing to bring light to the darkness in this world. So Robin, we covered this last episode, but for those who didn't hear our last episode, you and I went to law school together.
We did.
And we have been killing it ever since.
Who would have thunk it? We did start an academic support where we needed just a little helping hand.
It's on the DL, dude. No.
That makes the story even better.
It does, right? And then we came to be successful. So I want to hear, I talked a lot about me in the last podcast. And as you know, this podcast is about true crime stories of ones that I've experienced, but also I'm going to bring in people in the field, in the industry, who have lived in the criminal underbelly, who are still working in the midst of the darkness for other people to try to bring light. And you were the first person that came to mind to bring on this show because you do so many things. You've done so many things. And so I know you're too humble to just brag about yourself. So I'll just run through what I know and you can tell me all the other wonderful things that you've done. But you were amazing in law school. You're the president of the Criminal Law Society, and you made me your vice president, which I loved. But after
we created that for an organization for ourselves.
I think we did. We just wanted to have a title. And then you then went on after law school to work for the LA DA's office, correct? Was that your first job?
I was actually LA as a law clerk, then Riverside.
Oh, Riverside. All right. I went to meet you. It was even hotter than it is here right now.
Yeah, it was bloody hot. Yeah. And it was hot.
Mm-hmm. So you went to Riverside DA's office.
Correct.
And then after Riverside DA's office, you went to LA DA's office.
That's right. I went back to LA.
And what did you do when you were in LA DA's office?
So, we went to law school, as you know, at that very pinnacle moment of criminal justice history. I'm going to take everyone back to 1994, which is when we started law school.
You're aging us. You realize that.
Well, we were two. And when we were there, it was the first gavel-to-gavel coverage of the one and only OJ trial. And not only was it something that took the country by storm and mesmerized everybody in terms of the criminal justice system, but what a lot of people don't know was that you and I had a front row seat to behind the scenes even then, because many of the law clerks that worked for Judge Ito, because he was a professor at Pepperdine, and for the DA's office were law clerks. And so we had people that were actually working the OJ case right there in our law school. And if you recall, and that's how you and I bonded, like by talking about crime and talking about these stories and wanting to make a difference and maybe having a little bit of criminal in us. But we were...
Easy, my husband might be listening. He's in the FBI.
We were just always fun. We were always like right on that side of fun. Fun right before it becomes criminal.
There is a thin line, right?
Sometimes crime is just bad judgment gone bad. And it happens. But anyway, yes, so that was where this all began. Our journey, your journey, my journey. And in a lot of ways, we've had a very parallel path.
We have.
I went sideways a few times and continue to, and here we are.
So you were like this amazing prosecutor at LA DA's office. You worked in the sex crimes, right?
I was started so at that time, as you recall, like all of a sudden domestic violence became the crime du jour. Domestic violence, which never had been really prosecuted. It was always, cops saying to one spouse or the other spouse, you go stay at your mom's, you leave here, cool down, see you later. No one got prosecuted. It was considered a domestic marital issue that wasn't really taken very seriously. And O.J. Simpson changed that, and that trial changed that, and it changed no more greater than in the state of California, but particularly in LA County. All kinds of laws came about. I mean, that was the beginning of the Crime Victims Bill of Rights kind of came about around that same time.
Because didn't it used to be the law was that if you were a victim of domestic violence, I remember this vividly when we were baby DAs, that if the victim didn't want to prosecute, we didn't prosecute.
Well, there was that. It started with that. But then I also remember in the DA's office where we also said, if you didn't want to prosecute, we decided we knew what was better. And we actually put victims in jail if they didn't show up. And I mean, there was a lot of evolution that happened in this area of we know better for you than what you know for you. You know, you can't press charges. We can press charges. It's still very confusing, actually, to a lot of people, like in terms of what autonomy. People don't recognize that in criminal cases, it's the people of the state of California versus defendant. And the victim is an alleged accuser or alleged victim or victim, however, survivor, whatever verbiage you want to put to it, but they're not a party. And they, you know, while they have input, they don't have a say. And there's a lot of progress and a lot of not progress that's happened in that area. But yes, that's where I started, in the evolving area of domestic violence, and then led into child sexual assault. I did a little bit of stalking. I also did, you know, like
who'd you stalk?
Who did I stalk?
And are you still stalking them? So you were, I'm joking. You were handling those stalking cases?
Those, you know, all those cases, what our office at that time called VIP. Those were.
What's VIP stand for?
Oh my God, you're now like.
Oh, sorry, I'm calling you out.
I know. Well, it was the Victim Impact Program.
Okay.
Phew, that was close.
Nailed it.
Test. But that was what we had. I mean, it went from DV unit, you know, and actually it's funny because back in that day, my goal was to work hardcore gangs. Mm-hmm. It was LA in the 90s. I thought, you know, gangs were where it was at. And the reason that I got interested in domestic violence was because of the same skills of dealing with non-cooperative witnesses that you would apply, you know, people versus greening, impeaching a witness. You would have to learn those skills in gang cases like you would in domestic violence. So I thought, oh, this is a good place for me to get in that experience. Anyone who's been in the DA's office knows that if they grab you in domestic violence, you're staying there for a minute. Mm-hmm. And that's where I was.
Yeah, I never actually did domestic violence. I mean, I've handled domestic violence cases, but I was never in that unit when I was in the DA's office. But you were in the domestic violence unit for how long?
Well, I was in Riverside. They had a misdemeanor and a felony unit. And as a baby DA, I was in the misdemeanor unit. So I did all the misdemeanors. And then when I came to LA, I went into general crimes. Then I got into the felony unit when I came back. You know, don't ask me about dates because I combine all of my dates and times I mushed my law clerk to my DA experience. So, and you know, it's like dog years being in the DA's office. Every 1 year feels like 7. and it was the best job in the world, but it was just, you know, there's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot to handle for anyone. And then while you were in the DA's office and you were handling sex crimes also, and then you kind of developed like a little niche, a specialty in sex crimes, because it's my understanding, because I got them for Christmas one year from my husband. He bought every one of your books that you've authored and gave them to me for Christmas.
Oh,
I know you thought I bought
got some royalties. Wow,
I know you did. You can thank Tom Brown for that, but and God bless him for doing it, because I don't even know that I knew you wrote all those books. Well, so how many books have you written?
Well, it's actually interesting because my books did not come out until I left the DA's office. And that's kind of a whole story in and of itself. That was a whole kind of piece of my trajectory. As you know, when you kind of hit that, you know, 10-year bubble in the DA's office, you kind of are one of those people of, are you going to be a career prosecutor? Are you going to go into administration? Are you going to try to be a judge? Are you going to leave and go in private practice? You get the 10-year itch.
It's kind of like the military. There comes a point where you have to make that decision. This is either my career and I'm going to stay in for the long haul, or I'm going to use this experience and spring roll into something a little more lucrative.
Or something satiating or different, right? Because after a while, like, a burglary is a burglary is a burglary. A rape is a rape is a rape. I mean, there's only so many. I mean, yes, you have crazy, interesting stories, as you do. But at the end of the day, you know, crime's pretty static in terms of what it is. I mean, obviously it makes a big difference and what have you, but I had kind of an epiphany moment, actually. What happened was I was, you know, we talked about this a little in the last episode, where, you know, I was in the DA's office trying sex crimes cases, and I would go to court and there would be like empty courtrooms all the time. And you know, you would go, there would be no parents, there would be no support people. And I'm talking on both sides. And that was really telling, right? The defendant didn't have anybody sitting there supporting them. A lot of times the victim didn't have anyone sitting there. And it was me, a defense attorney, a bailiff, a clerk, a court reporter, and a judge. And we were the only ones hearing these people's stories and pouring our hearts and souls into these stories. And one day, I'm in the middle of a trial in downtown LA. I get out of court, I'm walking down, and all of a sudden I hear helicopters. go circling above the building. I'm like, what the hell is going on? So I say to this bailiff, I'm like, what's going on? They're like, oh, Paris Hilton got arrested for DUI. And everyone was like running outside to see what happened. And the helicopters were out. And then I like get in the car and it's like, Paris Hilton is arrested for DUI. And I'm like, I was just in like a protracted sexual assault case. No one in the world is there. And everyone cares about Paris Hilton's DUI. Are you kidding me? And so at that kind of moment, I was like, what is like wrong with our world? And if this was the beginning of TMZ and Radar and what have you. And then kind of fast forward, I was writing books, and I had a case against Mark Garagos, and I was telling him I was writing books, and he called me one day and he said, hey, you want to go on the Larry King show? I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, you want to go on the Larry King show? I'm like, let me ask my work if I can go on the Larry King show. So I go to my boss, and they're like, yep, you can go on the Larry King show, so long as you're not talking about any of our cases. And I told them I'm writing books, and I want to promote my books, and this is a good way for me to get my name out there, and blah, blah, blah. And I went on the Larry King show, and first of all, they made me like look really pretty, not like how I look right now. A lot of good.
You look gorgeous.
They make you look really great. And I go on, and I'm on with Judge Joe, someone, and Mark Garagos, and me, and Larry, and we're all talking about these cases. And I got off the air, and this is when I had a BlackBerry, and I'm like looking at my phone, and my phone is like blowing up, and I'm like, holy shit, people watch television. Like I got texts from like 30 people in 20 minutes. I saw you on TV. I saw you on TV. I heard you talking on TV. And coming off the heels of these empty courtrooms, I thought, wow, if you really want to make a difference in the world, you got to get on television, because that's where people hear things and learn things. It's not in these courtrooms. They don't know about these cases. And if you really want to make a difference, I got to find a way to get to TV. So that was when I had some, I tell people.
Yeah, can I just tell you, this is fresh out of the oven for me. I have never heard this.
That's my story.
This story. How do I not know this?
That's how I ended up doing TV. And then, so I go on television. I'm like, first of all, I'm like, they make me look pretty. I get to talk about someone else's case and how I would do it better. I don't know. I'm like out of there in an hour. They have a limo come and pick me up. That's why you're like, oh, I don't want to talk about any case without the facts. I'm like, that's the best way to talk about it when you don't know anything. No, but you
can't get in trouble, right?
You can advocate for it, and you can, based on what I know or allegedly, those are all great words, right? And I really realized what a difference it made. And so I made it my goal at that time to try to get on television. Now, I will also say some people, when their life is falling apart, have an affair with a person. Some people have an affair with a career. I was also having marital stuff and trying to find myself, and was kind of figuring I needed to rehaul everything. So that was my career with my affair with a career, and I was in the television world, and that's how we got you on TV. And downtown Heather Brown came to life.
And that's how I got my nickname with Robin Sax on Fox 11, right?
I was there, and then it all really started. It was actually kind of funny. This is another story, is that this is 2009. So take you back to 2009. If you remember 2009, like the stock market had crashed, like it's the world's worst economy. I have like the best gig in the world, right? I work for the county. I've got a county pension. I've got paid time off. Everything's great or whatever. But I have, back to your question of how many books, I have like 3 books that I have to get done. And I'm like, I need to get these books done. I'm trying to get on television. So I'm like, I'm going to retire from the DA's office, and I'm going to try to make a go of books and TV and everything like that. And my boss at the time said to me, I don't know why you would leave this office. This is the best thing in the world. You have the best pension. You have the best things. Why don't you just take a leave of absence? So I decide that I'm going to take a leave of absence from the DA's office, and I'm going to take you back now to May 26, 2009. If you don't remember that day, I do, and the rest of the world will too in a moment. Is all of a sudden on that day, on May 26 or thereabout, some really, really important celebrity died.
Michael Jackson.
Bingo.
Nailed it. I was like, who died?
And all of a sudden because at this point I started doing Larry King regularly. I'm on Larry King. And this is like, I'm on Larry King. It's like a Thursday night, Friday morning, or maybe I was on Friday and it's now Monday morning, something like that. I get a call on Monday morning. Hi, Robin, this is Richard Doyle. That was my head deputy, or one of the directors. It's Richard Doyle. I just want to let you know that I'm on a leave of absence from the DA's office. just want to let you know that the entire Michael Jackson prosecution team is watching Larry King, and you did a very good job, but you really can't talk about that case. I'm like, we're handling that case? I thought it was going to be the Attorney General's office. He's like, yeah, you still represent the office, and you may not talk about that. I'm like, lesson learned, no worries. I'm so sorry, I had no idea. When Mr. Doyle didn't realize, I was like booked for like 6 other shows that day, like, you know, ET, CNN, like I was like, this is like my OJ moment, right? So I hang up the phone and I do what every Jewish girl does, right? I call my mom, I call my lawyer, I call my therapist, you know, like, what am I going to do? I call my husband, what am I going to do? Should I do this? Should I not do it? And I'm driving down Sunset to go to CNN to be on the air. And I literally, again, pull out my BlackBerry, pull out my phone. Dear Mr. Cooley, I hereby resign immediately. And like resigned and went on television. And then the LA Times did me dirty and wrote a article suggesting that I got fired for being on TV. But I did just quit. But you know, that's a lesson of bad publicity.
For the record, she quit, was not fired.
Right. And I wrote an article about it for the Huffington Post. But that catapulted my career in terms of being on television, at least. I mean, and I was doing the television world for a while.
Yeah, and you were awesome. I loved watching you as a legal analyst. You always looked fabulous too, but
always a good excuse to buy clothes.
Yes,
but
yes,
not shopping.
And she has plenty. But you always gave a fresh perspective, and you know, had such great experience as a prosecutor, and came to it, you know, with a reasonableness about you that I think people want to hear and need to hear.
I got to tell you. You know, people ask me now, like, oh, I don't see you on TV anymore. Why don't you do TV? Like, I'm only doing this because it's you. Because honestly, like, I'd get canceled in 2.3 seconds now. People are such snowflakes and so sensitive. And if you say this, then you're that. And there's so much hate. And I have a family. I have other things going on in life. Like, you know, the littlest thing goes viral, or you take a clip and have it edited just wrongly, rightly, whatever it may be. And it could really, you know, be very, very damaging. And when you're, you know, have other people to think about, you think twice. And by the way, the whole legal analyst world really changed with the, you know, 2016 election. All of a sudden it became no longer talking about like crime or crime stories per se. That was for Netflix and binging, but local news and news all of a sudden became about politics. And I don't do politics. I don't do politics. And so I wasn't going to talk about.
So I shouldn't ask you any political
questions.
Ask me
any
I wouldn't dare.
Questions. But I will tell you that we've got a crime problem.
A huge crime problem, especially in Los Angeles.
I am very vocal. I am very vocal on my feelings on crime. We have gone backwards in victims' rights. And I'm a criminal defense attorney too. I think it's bad for everyone. You know, you have hoodlums that are being put to doing crimes because they're juveniles and there's no consequences, and then they're being completely used by criminal enterprises for their juvenile status, and it's horrible. There's just so much. I have so much to say about that, but that's another day.
Yeah, that's crazy. I hope people understand.
Exploited. That was the word I was trying to think.
Thank you. Yeah, no, they're being exploited.
They're
being
totally exploited. And the thing is that like the thing that makes the criminal justice system work to a certain extent, and there's a lot of problems with it, and I don't think it's perfect, and there's a lot of issues, and we need to think about mental health, and a 17-year-old is not the same as a 12-year-old, and there's different types of things. We have to think about developmental age. But this idea that there's like, it's the Wild West and there's no consequences. I mean, consequence is what we use for children, right? If you put your hand on the stove, you're going to burn it. That makes you not do it again. And now in our society, you put your hand on the stove and you get a hug.
Yeah, and a trophy to go home with. Yeah.
So it's really, and the problem is you kind of don't know who's who anymore. People feel very unsafe. People don't feel safe in their homes. I mean, it's really sad. Anywho, that's my crime banter.
Okay, that was crime banter. Yeah, no, and I agree wholeheartedly with everything you're saying. I think, and I will weigh in on this, George Gascon is ruining Los Angeles, has ruined it. It's crazy. But you don't have to.
No, I mean.
Yeah, I know you operate there. I don't practice in Los Angeles so much, but
I wouldn't say that he's a fan of Robin Sax.
Okay, well, I don't think there's many even prosecutors who are fans of his right now, but or people, or how about just people in the community who are being victimized? But we don't have to go on a rant about him. But I love that you work tirelessly to help the victims of crime when you are a prosecutor, and you wrote these books about sexual abuse. What are the names of your books so our fans can go out and buy your books?
So, and it's so funny. So I have Predators and Child Molesters, a Sex Crimes DA answers 100 of your most asked questions. I have It Happens Every Day. So 2 books on sexual assault. They're mainly parenting books. And a lot of my work is in the parenting world right now. And so we can get into that. I did do an Idiot's Guide to the Criminal Justice System.
Oh, I like that. I should buy that book. No.
I did 2 books on women's lawyers, Reaching the Bar and Raising the Bar. And it was a collection of women lawyers. It was a compilation of a bunch of different lawyers telling their stories, and really amazing women who have kind of come out and done amazing things, and a lot of names that you would know.
So you wrote all these books, and you indicated that some of them were, in fact, more like parenting books. And so tell us about that. After you wrote these books, you became a criminal attorney, helping victims of crime as well, Marcy's Law Attorney. And then you have moved into, you have like this amazing practice in the family law realm. Tell us about that.
So after the DA's office, left the DA's office and started, I had a very small legal practice where I did victims' rights and a limited number of criminal defense cases, did while I was doing television, writing books, teaching. Then I had an epiphany one day, and it was right about a period of time, and I was doing a great deal of criminal defense cases at the time, and I happened to have like 20 DUIs on my docket that I was doing. And I was like, and keep in mind, at this point, this is now 2015 or so. I'm thinking in 2015, we are well into Uber and Lyft, and DUIs are no longer like viewed with much empathy anymore. And I was like, I don't know that I want my legacy in life that I, am getting people off DUIs. And, the cases and causes that I loved, even my defendants, were people who had issues that needed help, that they didn't have a voice, that they needed direction, that they were being mislabeled and misjudged, and situations were not being appreciated for what they were. And there were nuances that got people to where they were in their lives. And so the cases that I really enjoyed were people had substance abuse issues, or they were victims of crimes, or they were abused, or something that they needed a conduit in the helping world. And it was at that point that I was like, I kind of had this epiphany that, I have one more act in my life. And I had kind of, by the way, Madonna's like my biggest hero in life and how she's reinvented herself. So I was kind of always like, how am I going to reinvent myself? How am I going to reinvent myself? And I was like, if I have one more act in life, I would love to be a therapist. And I went back to school and became a therapist. And when I went back to school, in the DA's office in sex crimes, and you've alluded to this in your last episode, was that there are a lot of people that are on the team in criminal cases. There's SART nurses, there's advocates, there's doctors, there's therapists, there's all these people that work together, the multidisciplinary team model.
Takes a village.
And it does. And it was also in sex crimes, often that was done to reduce trauma, to help maximize effective prosecution, to coordinate resources, to streamline the process. And that was my favorite part about it, the DA's office, is I thought that the multidisciplinary team was a brilliant model. It is still the gold standard in terms of how you prosecute cases. And I thought, if I could somehow create that model in the private sector where mental health was working with drug treatment, was working with lawyers, was working with people, it would really help people. And at that point, in the family law space, a lot of people, a lot of child abuse, a lot of sexual abuse, a lot of those cases have crossover between family law and criminal case. So as you know, right, there's a domestic violence case, someone gets arrested, DCFS, Department of Children and Family Services gets called, all kinds of agencies, and multiple cases are going on at the same time. And so I went to school, became a therapist, and with the goal of integrating both mental health and the law together in a combined practice, which is what I do at Dear Co-Parent now.
So you're kind of a coordinator of all those people within the family law realm?
Well, it's a little bit of both. So I mediate. I act as a parenting plan coordinator, which is like a special master in cases where they'll let decisions like, do we pick up the kid at 5 or do we pick up the kid at 6 on a day-to-day? Sometimes families offload those decision-making to somebody like me. I do co-parenting counseling. I do reunification or conjoint therapy with families where there may be what's known as resist, refuse. I tend to get involved in really high conflict or highly complex family law where there's criminal, family abuse going on, and work with a family. And I do act as somewhat as a kind of view myself somewhat as a quarterback of bringing the team together, because I love working as a team, but I'm usually one of the members of the team. So if I'm doing the co-parenting, then the kid may have their own individual therapist. The parents may each have their own individual therapist. They each have their own lawyers, but we all kind of work together. And the goal is to, I tell people all the time, it's like I'm a lawyer and a therapist, and in some ways I'm both, in some ways I'm neither.
Wow. And you have like quite a following on Instagram, right? I know you could always use more followers.
Yes,
so tell
please.
us.
Dear Co-Parent. I'm trying to grow.
It's at Dear Co-Parent.
At Dear Co-Parent on Instagram. Yes. And I'm experimenting with different social media right now because I'm trying to dish out little pieces of the nuggets that come up in my sessions all the time. I mean, certain themes definitely come up. And it's a lot of people are faced with divorce and conflict, and I talk to kids, I talk to therapists, I talk to parents, and it's really interesting. The 10 or 15% of these very highly conflictual divorce situations take up 80% of the resources and time in the family court system. And so so people are constantly always trying to figure out how can we scaffold and help these families in a way so that we keep them out of court. I mean, people are spending hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to fight. And so my goal is to kind of help people reduce the conflict, get their kid out of the middle, and really kind of work to keep the peace to the extent that you can.
To the extent you can. Well, I got to tell you, Robin, that is such honorable and noble work. I couldn't do it. I worked on one domestic violence restraining order on a family law case, and it was mind-boggling, the decisions that were being made on that case, but just the antagonistic nastiness of the fighting, not just between the parents, but like the attorneys in the family law industry were horrible, like so much worse than criminal. I was shocked at the behavior of the other side on this case. And it was quite disheartening to see that people, and it was like, no wonder your client's behaving the way he's behaving if you're going to behave that and model that behavior. So to have someone like who's trying to be a peacemaker and move things through the system with the most the least amount of wreckage or damage to the child is very honorable, that you'd be able to get in the fray. I think that's a very noble cause. And
but it's like you though. It's a lot like you, because it's hard work, and it's like it's the light. It's being the light, right? Because you're being the light. Because to me, I don't look at the adults as my clients, even though they may be the one in my room or my Zoom room or the ones who are paying me. But I'm doing that because that kid needs me to whip those parents into shape. Exactly.
That child needs Robin Sax to bring the light to that situation in that darkness. That child really needs you, Robin, because I see it way too often, and there is bleed over into the criminal cases. And you see, as a prosecutor, I would see that. And even now as a defense attorney, I see that too. And that you could be the light in the darkness for these families is really incredible. And my hat's off to you. And I mean that wholeheartedly, not just because you're my buddy. Like, I respect you so much for doing that. And I love the advice and the tips that you give on Instagram. And I'm not going through a divorce. My kids are fine. Like, they're wonderful. And I'm, all together here in my family. But just one of the best little videos that you made that I loved was the advice about if you're laying there at night, because I worry sick about my children. And, I shouldn't worry so much because it is technically a sign of a lack of faith, which I don't have a lack of, but maybe I do on that area. But the worry, I I worry about my kids. Like, oh my God, what if this doesn't go well? Or my son has a cold. He's at college right now and he's not feeling well. And I worry. What if he doesn't have to eat? Like, I worry about those things. I'm sure you, being a Jewish woman, you worry twice as much as I do.
All the time.
Right. And so,
well, the disaster channel, we play the disaster channel, because then you go from worrying, I'm worried about it, to, the worst case scenario. And when you live in the world that we've lived in, the worst case scenarios happened.
Yes.
We've seen it.
Yes.
And so it's not like just a figment of our imagination. And that's the thing that's hard for people, is like when you have a worry that's based in reality, and a lot of worries are. So you can't just be like, oh, I'm crazy. You're like, you can't be crazy if you're seeing what you see like you do.
Yeah. So what you were saying on your podcast that I was like, oh, wow. I'm not your podcast, on your Instagram, was wonderful about
the colors of the rainbow.
Colors of the rainbow. Like, and you're going to have to go on to @Dear Co-Parent, because I can't recite it right now, but it was a really great way to stop the ruminating thoughts. And I know that you and I are not alone. I'm sure you have them about your beautiful daughter and everything and all your other children, but it's like,
and you have them about money, and you have them about jobs, and you have them about like vacation, and you have them about your house falling apart, and you have them about interest rates, and you have them about all these kinds of things. We all ruminate thoughts. And
so that was great tips. I love the tips about how to, you just give some really amazing tips for families, for parents, which I know as a parent, we're needing, we're wanting, we're seeking. And so if you have the need and the desire to get some great parenting tips, @Co-Parent, Robin Sax, she's amazing. Dear Co-Parent, sorry, I gave you the wrong one.
That's okay.
Dear Co-Parent. And you get to see Robin, and she's always wonderful with her advice and her tips for how to, bring some light to your dark situation. And that's what it really is. That's what it's all about. I love that you're donating your life, right? The one thing we can't get back, we can always get more money, but you can't get back more time. And the time that you give, to other people, and while they're in their darkest times, like going through a divorce is a very, very dark time when you're fighting for your children. And I see how hard you fight for them, and everybody needs somebody on their side to bring a little bit of light to the situation. So thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you.
I think you're amazing. What's in store next? I mean, God, you're going to become a doctor? You're going to go to medical school and try to one-up me since I beat you in that moot court competition? That's what I feel like.
You did. You definitely did.
To show me up.
No, you know what? I love school. I'm a lifelong learner. Like, I really love school. I mean, I don't like tests and I don't like assignments. Just
Are you serious?
I like going in. Oh, I go to like all
what
the
is
seminars.
Wrong with you?
I love that kind of stuff, and I like really like would love like lots of letters after my name, to be honest with you. But I love learning, but I don't have the bandwidth to do any more school, though. It ain't happening. But I love what I'm doing, and I think the thing is, and I think it's so important, and I think this is why you were such a successful prosecutor, is it's so interesting. When I was in the DA's office, I'll never forget. I had this case, and I just didn't put my heart and soul into it. And I think because I really didn't believe that my person was really a bad person that I was, prosecuting. And I think juries can feel that, and they know that. And I think that and that's in everything we do. If you don't have your heart and soul in it, it shows, and people know, and they feel that. I mean, and I think that's why, if you're watching that Australian break dancer, why everyone is thinking she's such a hero, is because she put her heart and soul into it, and she didn't give a shit what anybody thought, but she sat there and put her heart and soul into it and loved it. And I think if you can sit there and put your heart and soul in things, the money will follow, the accolades will follow, everything else will follow.
That's great. No, that's a great message. I love that. I think it's about being authentic too. Like your heart, if you're like your heart and soul, it's really about authenticity. And I know I found that, authentic relationships, really can have, and authentic conversations, right? About your own struggles when you kind of
vulnerable, being able, we're all imperfect. We all broken. Fuck up. We all make mistakes. We need to humanize making mistakes. I mean, we live in a defensive society where we want to blame other people and we want to minimize. The world would be so much better if we could all just realize, what, we screwed up, and model saying I'm sorry, and modeling saying I can do better. I truly believe that we are all doing the best that we can, and we can all do better.
Amen. Amen. That's a great positive note to, I think, end on. Is there anything else that we need to promote for you?
No, I'm wishing you the best. I love this. I'm going to be listening.
Well, you're coming back.
I'll be back.
There's more to be said from you. Robin
Yeah,
Sax.
you can't shut this one up.
No. And I love you for it. I love you for it. Thank you so much. I have just enjoyed immensely spending time with you. This is the only way I could get Robin to come visit me. She's so busy with her zillion things. That's another topic. We'll talk about how you balance all this stuff and she's got like 4 million friends and she'd love 4 million followers.
That's right.
At Dear Co-Parent. Please. You can follow her on all the social media channels. And Instagram, she's on Facebook at Dear Co-Parent. Anything else? Are you on?
I'm on X, formerly known as Twitter. I'm not on TikTok. I'm not a TikToker yet.
She's not on TikTok yet, but maybe some young person will show her how to do it.
Because I'm a boomer.
And but she's amazing. And if you want great co-parenting tips and you want to see how she is shining a light on the darkness, and we're going to wrap it up for today. But if you want to follow more of my podcast, you can check me out on all the streaming platforms for podcasts, and check me out on Instagram, and have a blessed day. And if you can't find the light, be the light.